Welcome to another episode of the Zealous Podcast. I'm Rocky Snyder, your host. This week, I have Marty Lauzon in as my guest. He is the Director of Sports Medicine and Athletic Performance for the Atlanta Hawks. He spent a number of years with the Cleveland Browns and Atlanta Falcons in the NFL, but recently has switched over to the NBA. We're going to find out how that switch has been, what he's doing with the Hawks, and what it was like to work in the NFL, as well as transition into the NBA. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram. In the meanwhile, Rocky_Snyder, and we're going to get this conversation going right now. Marty, I can't thank you enough for coming on. This is going to be great. I already know it. You know, we talked before the show, and even last week we were having this great conversation and just diving in deep. And I got to say that you're following in some really kind of amazing footsteps in the regards to being an athletic trainer and all the stuff that you've done through the NFL with the Cleveland Browns and Atlanta Falcons, 11 years each there, 22 years in the NFL. But then you pivoted, and now you're in the NBA with the Atlanta Hawks. I had a previous guest by the name of Al Vermeil, and Al was a coach for the Niners back in the heyday of the 80s with Montana and Young. And then he pivoted and landed with the Chicago Bulls as Jordan was making the scene there. So it's interesting. Let's just kick that off. What is it like for 22 years of NFL, being an athletic trainer, delving into sports medicine and all that, to switch over to the NBA?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I think it's been fun, our discussions, and appreciate the invite and being able to record this. You never know where the opportunity leads you. That's, whether you're in school or you start your first internships or you start your career, a door will always open. And the NBA, the door basically is just open, and it's a transition that you make. And it's also a nice way to, learn a new sport, reinvent yourself, have new challenges and a new staff, and learn everybody and the ways that things are going to, the schedule. So it's been really, it's been challenging, but it's so much fun and I like to say that it's kind of like you're reinventing, mid-career, you're pivoting. And it's been a lot of fun for me to, get to know the athletes, the organization, and the schedule, and what the NBA entails. So it's been a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to year two. Year one was a little bit of a whirlwind, but now that we have some time to get away, plan, reassess some things that we've done, and then plunge now into year two. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, you go from having 16 regular season games with a potential of 2 or 3 in the postseason with the NFL, with an active roster of somewhere around 64 or so, and to a team of 16 on the NBA?
Yeah.
But 86 games, am I right? No, that's not quite right.
82
games, fewer athletes. I mean, talk about an inverse relationship, flip-flopping it. What's that like to deal with fewer athletes compared to being in the NFL?
No, it's been, well, that's the thing. You can dive in a little bit more in each guy. And when I mean a little bit more, it's a lot more. The player is really interested in knowing what you're thinking, your thought process, what's best for him. The discussions are more in depth. There's more time in the office one-on-one, and then there's more time on the floor with the staff. So I think it leads to, and there's more times, in the therapy room, there's more time in the weight room. So there's just more time to have really good discussions and to try to dive into each player, what's best for him. So that's been a really nice difference, is just the time, the discussions, and the athletes are a little bit different, and I mean, the NBA, you can get them as young as 18 because they, it's a 1 year in college, and then you can draft them. And you can get the player that's European, who's, who knows 3-4 different languages, who's played in different countries, who comes here to the States, and, he's been exposed to so much. So the discussions can be in English, of course, but I'm French Canadian, and I went to physical therapy school. It was a bilingual program at the University of Ottawa, and there's a couple of times, we're having discussions here in French, and because some of my players can speak French. So it's different. The athletes are different, and the demands, of course, are different. We all know that, but the mentality can be just it's a little bit more worldly with some of these guys are from Europe. So it really lends to some interesting discussions. They've been exposed to different therapies. They've been exposed to different ways of doing things. So it's always great to have these sit downs and kind of talk about their either injury history or their present injury and how we think we're going to get them back on the court. So they're really fun discussions. So that's the big difference, in regards to the athlete or the number of athletes. And of course the games, your delivery system is different because now you can play 3 games in 4 nights in 3 different cities. So instead of delivering your quality care, you're really, I won't say once a week or twice a week, but it's not one trip a week. It's, there's so many games now that you have to do it daily, nightly. Your thought processes, during the game, after the game, on the plane, what happens at the hotel. So every day you're always kind of re-engineering that and making sure that the player get, everything that he's hoping to get, and you doing it in the right atmosphere at the same time. So that's a big difference, the travel. But it's fun. It's quite the challenge, and the athletes make it worthwhile because it's been great having these discussions with them and with the staff. It's been fantastic.
Now, the thing that really blew me away when we were having a conversation prior was that the number of staff members, like the amount of athletic trainers, strength coaches, assistants, and I don't know if we spoke of interns, but they're almost the same between NFL and NBA. Even though you've got dozens more players in the NFL,
yeah,
you still have the same amount of staff in the NBA. That must just be a dream.
Well, yeah, no, it's helpful for sure. It depends on each organization. Does it a little bit differently. There's some staff in the NFL now that are starting to be bigger full time, 5 or 6 full time in the training room, and then 2 or 3 in the weight room. So the staffs are getting bigger. I think there's a better understanding now that, hey, it's hard to do it for so many athletes. Some teams like to have a lot of interns too, where you can have 6, 7 interns that are also helping your staff in football. So in the NBA, to have a staff of 8 or 9 people to take care of 16 for sure it's helpful because, like I said, you can really kind of really dive into more into each player and get into what they want and the crux of what they want to talk about, what they want to be heard about, and how you can deliver the service. So it's been a nice adjustment for sure to being able to do that. And also the agent in the NBA is involved. Not that he isn't in the NFL, but you talk to agents a lot more in the NBA. There's a good working relationship there, and it's fun to get their feedback and trying to help them, trying to help the athlete, trying to help the team. Like it's definitely an interesting combination of all of that work. But it's great to have these relationships and being able to build on them because your staff is really really owned in on these guys. Whereas sometimes football, like it's busy. It's there's meetings, there's lifting, there's rehab. There's a lot going on, and you're trying to deliver the service the best way possible in a certain amount of time. Where we have a little bit more time in the NBA, a little bit obviously less guys, so it tends to be a really good atmosphere that we can really work together.
Yeah, well, you're really delivering a solid product if we could just compare to your previous accomplishments. I mean, with the Atlanta Falcons, you guys had the least amount of injuries for a long run while you were with them, correct?
Yeah, no, it was a good run over that, being the healthiest team over 10 years over that span, always being one of the top teams. It's been, it's very rewarding. Everybody tries to deliver the service, but it was fun seeing that that study of injuries come out. Gamesman lost last year to see that we did, the staff, we did do a good job from the coaching staff to scouting to, GM. Everybody was such on the same page of trying to stay healthy and try to do it. It's so multifactorial, but it was fun that we were able to do something, that was worthwhile for the athletes. That's for sure.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to spend too much time with the NFL. I really want to dive into the NBA, but I'm curious. You're with the Browns for a decade at least, and you're with the Falcons for a decade at least. Browns, I don't know, maybe you made it to the playoffs two, potentially three times during that time. I can't really recall, maybe once.
Yeah, we made it one time.
One time, okay. But the Falcons, that's a different story. So,
Yeah.
what was the culture like and when you went to work? Was there was there a noticeable difference in your memory as to when you went to work with the Browns, or was it the same as when you went to work with the Falcons, or was the culture completely different?
Like any place, winning breeds that atmosphere. And we did have in Cleveland, we did have amazing people there, and I'll never forget my time there. Just really special people that worked there, and we worked hard to stay together and bond together. And unfortunately, that did not necessarily mean wins on the field, but some of my lifelong friends are we all worked together in Cleveland, and we made some really special friendships there. In Atlanta, we had really, special players from, Matt Ryan, Roddy White, Michael Turner, Julio Jones. Like, you start winning games, it really breeds that, atmosphere of winning. So, when organizations start, feeling that, and when players start feeling and tasting winning and what it looks like, what it feels like, the amount of work you have to put in, it's contagious that way. So I think that was, more palpable in players, but I think that's every organization. When you start getting on a roll, you can feel that. No different here last year, the season before last, when, we started playing really, really well, coming together in the playoffs and going to the Eastern Conference Finals. And you can feel that. You can feel the momentum shift. You can feel it sometimes in a game shift, and sometimes you feel it over a span of a month, where things just start clicking. And it's definitely a special feeling. Like any atmosphere, it's fun to work in those atmospheres of where, guys really want to get out there and everybody's pushing that same, it's like any business when everyone is pushing the same direction. Well, it's a lot of fun.
But what about the pressure on you in your role? Do you sense that, like, as the wins accumulate, there's a little bit more pressure, or doesn't that not exist? There's always that level of responsibility and professionalism, of course, but do you feel it waver at times? Am I asking that right?
I think,
right?
honestly, in sports, and I think, people can relate to that. There's pressure both ways, right? If you don't win, then there's pressure of change, possible change that could be coming, from not only the head coach, general manager, but also your staff can be affected. I was affected, and that's how change happens. And then when you win, that's the other side of it, where there might be more pressure of like, hey, we need, players available because now we're so close. But, you can only control what you can control. And that's, how you react and how you are with the players. And if you let all that outside noise really bother you, it'll bother your staff. That will translate to the players. We each have our own little things to deal with. The players have their own contracts, their own family situations, their own playing time. We have the same, our contracts are, delivery system. So all you can do is control you. And I think over the years, as you get older, you understand that. And you want to be there for your staff. As a director, I try to understand, like a staff member, is he single? Is he married? Or is she married? They have kids, like you just want to help them. You want to help them keep their eye on that. That's the most important thing, is family. And the atmosphere here has to be positive and be conducive to that. Whether you're at one end of the spectrum or the other, you're just trying to look out for your staff and making sure that, hey, let's deliver. We're doing something special. It's a privilege to work in pro sports. Let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy being around one another. We've spent a lot of time with one another. Let's enjoy delivering the service to the players, making sure it's a great atmosphere. And that's all you can control. So whether, you may fear loss of job, or you're really getting close to a championship. Like, all you can do is try to stay. That's what I've tried to do. And that's what, my mentors or my dad or, my family has always said, just like, control what you can. That's all you can do. The rest, you're just hoping that your staff is good and that you can continue doing what you love doing.
Well, you mentioned your dad, but you also mentioned mentors outside of your dad. Who are some of those? Do you have?
Yeah, no, I think, I was at the University of Ottawa in the physical therapy school, and I met the head trainer at the time, Dave Barry. Him just telling me, hey, you feel like we're helping out in football, like, what? And then we became, lifelong friends. And Dave just gave me such a love for, athletic training and physical therapy and working with teams and developing a core relationship that you're going to spend a lot of time with people in the training room or in the rehab room, be friends with them, And Dave was amazing at just being such a good person. And then I was recruited to the United States by Byron Hansen, who's at the time at USC. And, my first job was in LA. And Byron, to this day, stays in touch and always wishes me well and always looks out for me, always wants to make sure I'm okay as a person first. And then after that, we talk about, jobs, but it's always, me as a person. I've always appreciated him. Him and his wife, Lori, were basically, surrogates to me. My first American Thanksgiving was with them. All my holidays out there. My English wasn't very good at the time. So they were so nice, so generous. I mean, Dave and Byron were so crucial to me for my development, whether it was in Canada or in the United States, and also their techniques and how they approached people. I mean, and how good of people they are. Whether you're in this type of business, you can't be too cynical about it. You got to be yourself. And those guys really, they were great along the way to show me that. And to this day, remain friends and always being in touch and, hoping the best for one another. That means so much. So, just there's always been special people at every different places, So I always appreciated that, whether it was in the NFL, general manager Phil Savage in Cleveland, giving me my opportunity to be a head trainer. And he was just, again, still friends to this day. And Dan Quinn, the head coach here in Atlanta, was just a really good person and an enthusiasm for connecting with people and making me a better therapist that way. Just trying to always connect with people, trying to find what, people will tell you who they are. You have to listen. He used to say that, and you're just trying to get to know these guys and trying to connect with them. And so there's been people, not only in therapy, but in different branches. Thomas Dimitrov, general manager here, brought me down here in Atlanta, gave me a great opportunity. A good friend, so it's always these things that come up where it's not just a mentor for, therapy, but a mentor in life too, and opportunities as well. But obviously, you're where you are because of your parents. So my mom and dad always, believing and trying to tell me, hey, the shortest point between A and B is a straight line. So what's your next move? What do you want to do? Plan your work your plan. Like always, being so loving, but also very supportive when it was time to do internships, not getting paid, in the summer.
Yeah.
Whether it was in the Canadian Football League or the World League of Football back then, and just different things I wanted to do, or spend a summer out at USC. They were so supportive, It was just so important to have their love and support that it makes you want to go for it. It makes you want to go the distance, for them. So it was great. The first time they came down to say USC, UCLA football game, from Montreal down to LA, to be part of that. And their first game in the NFL, their son's working in the NFL. It's kind of a bit surreal for them, but yeah, and they see me on the field, and it was just our first game in Cleveland was against Pittsburgh at home, and in 1999, and it's for them to see that. So all these little things, it's so much fun to pay that back to them. It was it's such a special feeling to pay it back to
Sure. Now they see you sitting courtside at NBA games.
them. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, my dad hasn't watched as much basketball in a long time. So.
Well, I want to talk about injuries because we brought that up a little bit. And common ones, inversion sprains, high hamstring pull, lower back aggravation. I mean, other ones that pop up that are pretty prevalent aside from those?
Yeah, knee patella tendonitis, always a big one in basketball. How to help that. Some Achilles soreness, Achilles tendonitis as well. I think, with the ankle issues and some of the knee injuries you can have, MCLs. I think you really see a lot of that in basketballs, and because of the amount of games.
And I know that there's certain protocols historically, right? When we're talking about, whether it be physical therapy or any type of therapy, they take one segment of the body and the knee's bothering them. Okay, here's the protocol for knee pain. Here's it for ankle pain. Here's for lower back, or whatever the case may be. Do you break away from the protocols to some degree and go, okay, this individual, their mechanics are what we really need to be looking at, or how do you enter into problem solving?
Yeah, the problem solve is always, it's a whole team approach, right? So the whole staff, and that's what's important, is to not create silos. So it's really to work together, whether it's, from our physical therapist, our athletic trainer, our head trainer, our head strength coach, it's just everybody coming in together and having an input of what they're seeing. Because sometimes you think you may see it all, but you don't. And you got to take everybody's input. So you want to get the doctor's input, want to get his take on, the pathology, his thoughts on it from a medical perspective. We're going to use biologics here or not? What's the expected time length? And then after that, you kind of get into each individual, because, the same injury is going to react differently as, to one player to the next. So getting to know that guy, his physical limitations, what is hampering some movement, and then what can we do to better, his situation, his current condition. So then you can really dive on, ankle positioning, knee positioning, hip positioning, lumbar. So then we can really get into it. So these discussions happen daily, and they're great to see, little things that each can bring to the table. And these discussions, of course, involve the athlete, because the athlete might have had that in the past. And you hear that a lot, where the athlete says, hey, I've had this injury 4 years ago, and I was playing in Italy, or I had this before, I was playing with another team, they had this approach, and what are your thoughts? So it's always important to include him and say, hey, look, this is what we're thinking. If you like doing this, let's add this, let's take this component, this is why we're going to do that. So educating the player daily on what the plan is, the approach is, and why we're doing it. Are we doing something to change a little bit of the fulcrum at the knee or at the ankle? You got to explain that to them. And that's the best way. You get compliancy, but you also get results. But it's really a nice discussion of everybody's involved, including the athlete, of why we're going to get to where we have to get, and after that, to keep everybody in the loop about it,
Is this done courtside or in a treatment room, or is it in the gym? Where does this typically occur when you get all of the professionals with the player?
Yeah, typically we do this. We have a conference room here at the facility, so we like to meet, each morning. Or if we're on the road, then it'll happen in the treatment room at the hotel, and then we have these discussions as a staff. But they happen on the plane, they happen on the bus. It's very organic, where you get an idea and you want to get it out there, and you just start talking about a player, and start talking about what could help a certain delivery system, either for the team or the player. So we try to have these discussions as you try to have them organized in the morning so we're all on the same page of some things we thought about. But organically, this staff is great to just bring in things. If we're having dinner together, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? So they can happen at a staff dinner. They can happen after a game, at the arena. So especially if a player has an injury that night, then we really, break it down as a staff to, hey, here's the plan. In regards to tomorrow, player's going to get some imaging, he's going to see doc again, and then we'll have maybe a better, clearer understanding of the exact pathology. We have an idea, but now we're going to get a little bit more nitty gritty into it, and we start already thinking about some things. And then the next day, once our doctor has more of a clearer picture or real input, now there's some things you talked about that you are going to put right into that process, and there's some things you haven't thought about that you're going to add. So that's when it's a more formal discussions. But it's been great with the staff, just kind of having these discussions. This morning I hadn't seen some of the guys in a couple of weeks because now it's off season, guys take time off. So just reconnecting with my head trainer, my head strength coach, and just talking about some of the guys and some of the things that we thought about, each on our own, and coming together and say, okay, hey, when guys come back, how about this for this guy? How about that? So it's fun how it can be formal or it can be informal, but we're all always thinking about the player and what's the best thing for him. So they're fun discussions for sure.
Very cool. Now, when I've asked professionals in the past, coaches and whatnot, what tool is your primary tool? And they'll say their eyes and their voice, right? Or their hands if they're more in line with therapy. What are your tools aside from those that I just mentioned? What other tools are in your toolbox for you and your staff?
I think the best, for me, one of the things I do well is connecting with guys. And I think that's important because you have to connect with the player, their agent, with their family. You have to explain, what's happening with the process of what we're going to go through to get some results. And I think and I learned that, from going from the NFL to the NBA, yeah, it's a different sport, the different positional demands, and all that stuff, right? But an athlete is still an athlete. He wants to be heard. He wants to have a voice. He wants to know you care. He wants to know you're trying, and he wants your best. And, you want his best at the same time. So that's what you realize. And I think it's something that allowed me when I first got here, from being a consultant position to developing in a full-time position, was just the experience of relating to players, talking to players, explaining things, educating them, which is always important. That's at the end of the day, you want people educated on what they have. So yes, I'm a manual therapist, I'm a manual physical therapist. And we do have, a variety of modalities, like everyone out there that we like, and our strength staff, they do a great job, and they have things that they go to. And I think we all have our own set of skills or eyes or retesting that we all do. But at the end of the day, for me, I think is connecting, is talking, is trying to find out, their why. Why are you doing this? And explaining mine. So I think finding common ground and getting to know the guys, I think is as the better relationships, I think the better outcomes. And I think sometimes we can get lost in a little bit of that in what we do. You're just trying to say, okay, let's get better. Whether we're in private practice, when sports, okay, we gotta get back on the court. Okay, we gotta get you to get up and down the stairs. But I think we've all been patients before, and we want to be heard. So I think sometimes as practitioners, we're really quick on trying to tell people, hey, here's the path that we're going to do for real or to get you back. But you can't forget to listen. And they give you so much input, and if they feel heard, then you're going to get somewhere. And I think we do that well.
Yeah, you've got to be obviously quite tactful and diplomatic when scenarios occur where the player feels like they're ready to return to play, but evidence is contradictory to that.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's pressure from different factions within the organization to get this person back on the court or back on the field, and you're going, whoa, wait. I mean, hey, I'm sure you've encountered those. How is that?
Yeah, I think you encounter that personally. I counted that, not that you encounter, but you see that at the start of your career where you're trying to impress, and yet you're also trying to listen, and you're trying to, there's so much going on. Doctor guidelines, team needs, you're trying to impress, yet you're trying to listen to the player. But I think as you get older, the more really objective process you have, the more you can present that to everyone and include everyone. Hey, here's some of the preseason testing. Now the player is hurt. We're trying to match all this preseason testing for, whether it's time on court, minutes, or length of court, speed, or all these things that you're trying to match. Football, the same thing, plays, amount of reps in practice, amount of reps in games, speed zones, all the things that you can watch, all these wearables that give us so much data. So if you're able to present that and say, hey, look, this is where we're at that preseason or pre-injury, here's the injury, here's what the process is going to look like, and here are some of the numbers that we need to match, or better, of course, for the player to return. If you're able to present that from the get-go, and you do a good job of explaining that, it takes a lot of this stuff out. And then the player knows you're going to put your best foot forward to get him back out there very safely. Management understands the timeline. Management coaching understand, okay, these numbers have to be matched. I get that. And it's also easy to say, hey, this is really good, but this isn't as good. So we're still waiting a little bit on this. And people understand that. And when you put a player back in practice, if he looks good, I understand that sometimes, everybody wants him out there. But if you have, hey, here was our plan, and here are the things that we had to hit, then it's way easier to explain that to everybody, because now everybody from ownership down and a player in his age, everybody understands. So it makes it a lot more comprehensive. Your approach is more comprehensive. Everybody's on the same page, and it takes a lot of that noise out. Honestly, it really does. So I think, it's always that. Provide the information up front. Preseason testing, that's where a lot of that comes in, when you return to play. And if you don't, if you're at the high school level, you don't have the amount of staff, or you can't do a lot of testing, then it's like, well, left to right, right to left, whether it's single leg press or, anything that you can find that says, okay, left to right, right to left, here are the deficits, this is what we're looking at, single leg hop, triple leg hop, like all the stuff that we know. If you're able to present it and say, hey, we're here now, we're trying to get here, this is why player cannot return, or this is why player can return. And then you can explain that to the player. Look, we matched that over to the agent or to his parents. So that's where data or things really come, measurables come to play, because you're just trying to make what's the best decision possible. And you're trying to make, everybody on the same page. And that's once you do that, you're in a good place.
Nice. Now, speaking of data collection, there's so many software programs. I'm just wondering, do you have one that collects it all, between the PT, the AT, the strength coach, the nutritional coach, the dietitian, sleep coach, whatever you have at your disposal? Are you all encompassed on one, or are they different softwares that don't necessarily communicate? Just kind of thinking about that.
Yeah, no, I think that's why there's so many companies now that have these platforms that, collect all this data, and they can, rearrange it for you. And I think that's important, because, what you're trying to avoid is silos. You're trying to avoid, everybody doing their own thing, no one's talking about it. So it's really helpful when you are all connected, whether it's at the NFL level, NBA, or high school level. If everybody's on the same page and understand the what you're trying to get to, it's much better. So now we have an in-house system here that our IT guys are great and putting it together, and so that we can all be connected that way and talk about, the player and what's important or any kind of changes. And we also do it mechanically, all of us together in the morning, face to face. So, but a lot of that data is collected, and if you keep it separate, I think it's really hard to have, at the end of the day, a really good product. So, but that's why there's so many companies now doing those software platforms.
So are you finding trends in regards to potential for injury? I imagine you do, but let's just take high hamstring pull or patella tendonitis, better yet, because that's the one you brought up. Are there precursors? Are there indicators based on some assessments, testing, or output of their own training routine that there's little red flags that come up in their profile going, okay, these metrics have been reached. Unfortunately, they are at a higher incident rate. This needs attention.
Yeah. Well, the injury history is important. Obviously, that's the one good reflection of, you're looking at the player's mirror right there, what they've been through so far. And then when a player comes here, they have a battery of testing that they go through when they become a Hawk. So from imaging to all the testing we do with them, it gives us an idea now of where to focus our attention in regards to making sure that patella tendonitis, whether it's left, right, or bilateral, doesn't come back if we take that example. So imaging is helpful, but also testing is helpful to see what output, left to right, right to left, bilateral, unilateral, put them in different situations, different things that we like to do with them, whether it's force plate, whether it's in the weight room, whether like all the different things to see, and getting their feedback too. There's their history and what helped them in the past or what's helping them right now. I think just putting all that together, it can be as wide and complex as you make it, but if you bring it together and you really get to know the player, I think you get a lot of information that way on how to best address it and how to make sure that there is, you're going to increase his productivity for this year and how he feels this year, but you're also trying to, help his longevity in the sport. So I think players, once you explain that, hey, we're looking at this year, we're looking at next year, we're looking at 3 years down the road, if we start doing these little things, they buy in because they know that you care for them now, but also for them in a certain amount of years. So just we put players through their own paces here, and it really gives us a lot of information. After that, then you got to go through the season, and then the season's a different stressor in itself. That's for sure.
Well, I know within the NFL, the height of injuries on the field typically occur in preseason or the first couple of weeks of the season, partly because for several reasons, but one, a condensed preseason based on NFLPA rules and whatnot doesn't allow for a long enough conditioning period to maybe keep the injury rates down. What's it like with the NBA?
The NBA it'd be this year will be our real, the NBA hasn't had a true off season in a few years due to COVID, due to different, scheduling. So COVID's kind of wrecked that a little bit. This year, we're getting back to more of a regular off season, which means that the preseason, isn't as long. You're playing 4 preseason games, kind of like the NFL. NFL overall training camp, you're looking at about, preseason, you look about 6 weeks type, 6 to 7. So the NBA, about 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks. But a lot of guys came back early last year just to get back on the floor, get back to working with us. So this year we're expecting guys back in, late August, early September, and that helps us put at least 3 good 4 weeks of our own foundation, what they have to do, get used to the practice and our lift, and just get back in the swing of things after either, spending a few months, resting, or a lot of guys, or, rehabbing or working with their own trainers A lot of guys now have a place to work out in the off season, and they have somebody they work with, or have a nutritionist or a chef. So just getting back to us and then kind of mixing some of their stuff with our stuff, and just making sure that now that we're getting back to getting them ready to play and the season that's coming upon us. So it's nice that the guys want to be in town, that's for sure. So when they come back a little bit early, obviously it gives you some ramp up time. And as the NFL is finding out, the more ramp up time, the better. So I think, and guys are smart about it too. And I think guys try to, in basketball, it's kind of a little bit more open that way, where guys can come back. In the NFL, you really have, that's why they have the OTAs, and it breaks at mid-June, and then mid-July, you're starting back up again for camp. So a lot of guys take that month, to go back away. So that's the difference with the NBA, where, you have the off season, you can break here right after the season, but guys start coming back a little earlier. So I think we have a little bit more ramp up time, which is kind of nice. I'm looking forward to it this year being more of a structured way than the last couple of years with COVID.
Yeah, I imagine there's going to be quite a few changes now that we're coming out of the bubble, so to speak. But some things must be remaining. Like you're not completely doing an about face. What are the challenges that you're coming across entering this next season?
Well, getting to know the new players, getting to know what makes them, that, and that's always a new thing, right? So now we just got done with the draft. We got a couple of young guys, and they're really young, 18, and then you traded for a guy, so now he comes in. You trade for another guy, he comes in, trade for another. So now, just how do these guys come in, work together, and also work with us? So getting to know them. We already had some FaceTime with them, but now it's going to be the day-to-day getting to know them, and that's always the thing. Each year is to get to know your new players, make sure they adjust well, make sure that you can help them all you can, so they can just focus on on basketball, and then so the rest of them, it's really organized well, whether it's away from the court or with their family, and so they can, when they're here, they can focus on this. So that's always a challenge of getting to know them, getting to, when the schedule comes out, understanding the schedule, understanding what it looks like, the amount of trips, the back-to-backs, the different things like that we look at as a staff, and try to help the coaches in that decision-making process where, here's some trips, here's a block of 4 games in 6 nights, or 3 games in 4, or back-to-backs in 2 different cities. And so then that's when we can try to get together and really try to help minimize some of the effects of not only the wear and tear of the game, but also of the travel. So
Sure.
Every year has got its own, set of human things that, the guys clicking together, guys working together, us working with them, and then, the mechanical side of the logistics, which is the schedule and the travel and the game. So there's always these new challenges that you have to look at and try to plan for as a team.
Okay, just non sequitur. I'm thinking we've got, when we're recording this right now, the Major League Baseball All-Star games tonight, but you've got All-Star game in the NBA. How does that work with your staff? And for the NBA, is there like an all-star director of sports rehab? Is there an all-star athletic trainer, all-star PT, all-star strength coach that go to the game too? How does that work behind the scenes when we talk about the All-Star game?
Yeah, behind the scenes, the host city, you're going to work as a staff. A couple of years ago, Atlanta was the site. Last year was in Cleveland, so the host team takes care of one side, and then usually they decide if that team's in first place. That year or the year before, the coaching staff can bring their own staff. In the NFL, for the Pro Bowl, was always the highest seed that gets eliminated first goes to the Pro Bowl. So it's every league has a little bit different wrinkle to it. But in the NBA last year, we sent one of our staff members with one of our guys. So just every guy has a little bit of that personal touch that he can enjoy having somebody from the staff there for him to take care of him before the game. So that's kind of how it works. So you can have 17 guys there with 17 different staff member, and then you got the host team that's helping out, managing the game itself. So it's kind of interesting mix of guys, but it's definitely a great experience. One of my staff members went last year, really had a good time in Cleveland, and get to know other trainers. It's a good way to know other guys around the league and get to see some of these players too. It's a lot of fun to see. We went to Steph and I in 2011. We were able to go to the Pro Bowl in Hawaii, and we had a lot of fun there, getting to know some of the players from all over the league, and getting to experience the game itself, and getting to know some other guys. So it was fun to do that. So they're really unique experiences, and I always tell young staff members, or I talked to the combine a couple of guys, if you have a chance to go, do it. I mean, it's such a unique event, unique characters, unique event, unique things. Like it's just so much fun.
Yeah, that's great. Now, is there a network of individuals like yourself in your position amongst the NBA where you get together, or is it somewhat just when time comes and you contact one another? But I know other sports organizations have like a strength coach organization for that particular sport. Does it work the same way in the NBA for you?
Yeah, same thing. We have the NBA TA, the Trainers Association. We have meetings at the Combine every year, and you can really develop some really good relationships with the guys. The NFL, the Trainers Association. So every league has their Trainer Association, and then the Strength Coaches Association. It allows you to meet, it allows you to have continuing education, get to know guys, and network. But also, I mean, some of the Con Ed is pretty good, pretty advanced, and some of the speakers this year in Chicago at the NBA Combine were excellent. So it's a good way to really talk more about what's in the NBA, what's going on right now, and having speakers that can help us deal with some of the things that we deal with. So it's really a unique way to get some good continuing education and some things that can affect us right now. So it's definitely an advantage being part of a professional league and professional association like that.
Nice. Okay. One of my final questions here kind of takes me to the dinner table every night when we go around as a family, talk about best and worst of your day. But for you in your position, Marty, what's the highlight? What's the best part of your position, and what would you say is the worst?
Well, the best part, this morning, just having one of our guys in and doing some things with him in the therapy room, then in the weight room, and seeing how well he had progressed and how well he's doing. I think that's always a highlight, and seeing the player smile. I know it sounds basic, but then, that we've put a good plan together and things are coming together. So I love that. Connect with my guys, my staff, and then connect with my staff, then connect with the player, and then seeing it all happen like on the floor. So that to me is why we get into this, right? So whether you're in private practice or high school or college, like when you see it come together and you see the reaction of the player, to me, that's always the best part of my professional day. Best part of my personal days always seeing my kids. That's for sure. That doesn't change.
Nice.
Seeing them and because they just want to hang out with dad. They love some of the basketball stories, but they also just want to hang out. And that's really the two best parts. I think the tough part is just, I think like anybody, just when you if there's a tough injury or a tough situation to deal with, just that's like anyone. But I think there's always that side of it where you can talk to your staff, lean on your staff, get advice, talk to a mentor. So even though you can have a difficult situation, it always opens a door for a positive one where you can lean on someone, you can get advice, you can reach out, or someone reaches out to you. So it can be a tough situation, it can be stressful, but sometimes, we make it more stressful and we stress about it more in our head than really is going on in real life. And I think that's why if you have good staff members and you have good relationships, that stressful situation can also become something that becomes a positive, because you can really reach out and somebody can be there for you. And yeah, the tough always leads to good.
Right on.
Try to deal that way,
Yeah. No, well said. Well, this time has flown by. I can't believe it. This is just amazing.
I appreciate you, man.
Oh, I appreciate you too, and your time and your availability. And I'd love to have you back on later, and we'll
Absolutely.
just kind of see how the season's progressing and how it is with your crew and everything else. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, man, I'd love it. And I appreciate you sending me your book. I'm looking forward to diving in and to continuing our offline discussions. I think it's great, man. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate all the discussion that we've had. And now, looking forward to your book.
Right on.
And that's a wrap for Zealous. I would be lying if I didn't say I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with Marty, and looking forward to the next time we have him on as a guest. And just wish him and the Hawks luck in the upcoming season. Be sure you tune in next week when we have another amazing guest. And be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Tell your friends. Take care.